Oh, look at that. Oh my god, look at those pops. Sheesh. This is what this build should be looking like, boys. That's the level of Herald popping that I want to see from this build. Woo! That's what I'm talking about, baby. Woo! The whole ground is just ice. The whole ground is literally just ice. Look at those pops. Oh, baby. Hey guys, so today I want to talk about my Herald Bomber, Herald Explosion, whatever you want to call it, Flicker Strike Ritualist. Now, huge credit to Korhor because I'm pretty sure, at least from what I know, is the first person who did this tech using Ulnatal's Embrace. This is a new Legion support champ that has opened up the Herald of Ice Armor Explosion kind of chain reaction to a lot more classes compared to before. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in depth in the video later. Now, the reason why I'm playing this build is because last league I played the Flicker Strike Invoker that was using the Herald of Thunder plus Voltaic Mark cast on freeze combo, and unfortunately that was completely gutted. So I've been trying to chase that Herald Bomber type of full screen clear this entire patch, and I think I've found at least what I think is the closest thing to it with this character. Now, going into the character itself, it is a level 93 Ritualist. It is currently a full energy shield character, so 6.1k energy shield, and of course 0 armor, 0 evasion, 0 block. And to be honest, the amount of energy shield I have right now is pretty like small, I guess, because I could increase that by a bit more as well. My gear is very, very bad in terms of the survivability aspect. This I bought at the very, actually I had this on an old character, and this was also bought for like a div or less or something like that, and this was also kind of like a placeholder boots that I bought as well. If I wanted to craft all three of these, I'm pretty sure I could probably get my energy shield up to somewhere between 7 to 8k if I really wanted to. And I also don't have an amulet with maximum of energy shield at like 50% and like the increased defenses either. So I'm pretty sure I could push my energy shield up to like 7 to 8k, if not above 8k, when I fully kit this character out. But that's the survivability of that. And then of course we have the resistances all capped out. We don't care about chaos resistance because we are playing chaos inoculation. Now that is the character and the character sheet, but I get a lot of questions from people, right? Why Ritualist? Well, I guess to go into that, we should probably talk a little bit about the tech. So the tech is, for your Herald of Ice, you have Armor Explosion linked to it with Ulnatal's Embrace. Now, Ulnatal's Embrace allows you to break armor using chaos damage. And of course, when you break armor, you get Armor Explosion. Now, the cool thing about Armor Explosion is that it actually allows you to chain Herald of Ice together with itself. Because normally, Herald of Ice says right here, while active, shattering enemy with a non-Herald attack will cause an ice explosion, right? So obviously, normally Herald of Ice cannot chain off of itself, but because Armor Explosion is the one that counts as getting the kill, then you're able to chain the Herald of Ice together and get some screen-wide explosions when the conditions are right. Now, I tried doing this with Herald of Thunder, right? I tried putting on Ulnatal's Embrace and Armor Explosion on Herald of Thunder to see if it would chain into Herald of Ice when it breaks the armor, and then of course it freezes the enemy due to Embitter and Frost Nexus Glaciation, right? But unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. I don't know why, but you just can't seem to get the Herald of Thunder to chain with Herald of Ice, even though, again, Armor Explosion does chain into Herald of Ice when it's on Herald of Ice. When it's on Herald of Thunder, it doesn't do that. So it's a little bit weird, but that's kind of the whole interaction there with Armor Explosion and Herald of Ice to propagate itself, and that's kind of like the tech overall. Now, why a Ritualist again? Well, this tech uses Ming's Heart because you want to have a good amount of chaos damage on your character to be able to break armor efficiently. You can see from my tooltip, I'm doing about 5,000 chaos damage on my Herald of Ice, and that's because I have Ming's Heart. That's where most of my chaos damage comes from. Now you can get chaos damage from a Heart of the Well jewel. You can also get chaos damage from some runes or talismans. I think it's runes. Yeah, runes on your weapon to get some extra chaos damage. I chose to have it on Ming's Heart, and to be honest, earlier on I did have to have the runes on my weapon as well, and the Heart of the Well to get enough. But over time, as I got more damage, as I scaled more, I was able to take stuff off gradually here and there. But yeah, that is the reason why we are using Ming's Heart. And of course, we make use of Pole Circle. So this is the one thing that Korhor does not use on his build that I think is actually really positive for this build and makes the Herald chaining even bigger. And that is the main reason why I chose to go the Ritualist, because we get this extra ring slot, which allows us the comfortability of being able to use Pole Circle. Now, with another class, you are able to use both Ming's Heart and Pole Circle, but unfortunately, using up both your ring slots for unique rings is really tough. Accessories are such an important piece of your equipment that taking away both ring slots is quite damaging to your top end damage. So that's why we ended up going Ritualist, so that we can still have a ring on top of everything. So yeah, that's really the reason why I went Ritualist. But of course, there's kind of a little bit more to that as well. It was kind of like a secondary reason, and that being that we get to use our charms no matter how many charges we have, right? Because Ritualist has this node right here. It can instead consume 25% of mana to trigger charms with insufficient charges. So that means with a silver charm, we don't have to worry about chilled ground maps at all. Now, unfortunately for the temporal chains maps, we do still kind of struggle with those because it only procs the silver charm when the Herald, or not the Herald, I keep saying Herald, when the temporal chains hits you initially, but the charm doesn't last for the entire duration of the temporal chains. So as a result, you only get that, 3.6 seconds at the beginning for that temporal chains to be not slowed. And afterwards, you are still slowed. So it's mostly for chilled ground, but still it helps a little bit with the temporal chains. But yeah, those are the two reasons why I went Ritualist, and you can definitely do this kind of tech with any other class. And Korhor says he thinks that Chayula Monk is the best to do it, but honestly, I have not had any issues with doing it on this Ritualist with this current setup. So yeah, that's why I am playing Ritualist. Now, of course, as I mentioned, I am playing Flicker Strike. This is going to be my main ability. You can use any other ability, it doesn't matter. The Herald of Ice chaining can work with any ability that is able to trigger Herald of Ice. So that's kind of why I'm using Flicker. I just think it's cool, and I'll probably be continuing making Flicker builds pretty much every single league because I love this skill. But with that, let's hop into our skills. So first, let's talk about the main kind of appetite, or the main course, right? Which is the Herald of Ice. So as I mentioned earlier, we have Ulnatal's Embrace with Armor Explosion, which is the main kind of propagator for this Herald of Ice chain. We also run Deadly Heralds to make Herald of Ice do more damage. Of course, we want Herald of Ice to always kill and always do enough damage to armor break. The more damage you deal, the more chaos damage you do, and the more chaos damage you do, the more armor you break. And speaking of armor breaking, we are also using Uruk's Smelting. So there is an armor break gem that's just like a normal support gem that does the 70% more armor broken, but there's Uruk's Smelting, which is basically that plus that additional line of breaking armor with supports causes targets to permanently take 2% increased physical damage. So this is just basically that gem, but better, and this is like dirt cheap. So I don't see a reason why not to use this. And that's why we use these gems right now. Now, we have Magnified Area 1 on here. Now, normally, I would have used Reach, but because we are using Armor Break, the accuracy does matter. So that's why I'm using Magnified Effect, even though Overreach does have a larger area effect. This is going to be better at propagating because it does not lower your accuracy. So that is Herald of Ice. Now, Flicker Strike, our main attacking skill, we have Rage 3, Overextend, Close Combat, Blindside, and Concentrated Area. Now, I have a very specific setup for this, kind of because of my character and the way it's set up. So I have a weapon that has 23% increased attack speed, not a ton, but it's, a line that we have on here, which increases our attack speed, obviously. So that's why we get to attack quite quickly. And as a result, I don't feel like I need to use rapid attacks or use hit and run. Now, you can use hit and run, you can use rapid attacks. A lot of people like their Flicker Strike to go as fast as possible. For me, mine is at a speed that I think is good enough, 0.66 attack time. I think it's good enough. So I chose to run Rage 3, which still does increase attack speed, but it increases your damage as well with Rage. I end up using Overextend because this allows us to do more damage. But, you know, of course, we get dazed or with this. But because we are Ritualists, we basically never have to worry about getting stunned because we have Stone Charms infinite, right? Infinite Stone Charms. So honestly, this is just a nice little bit of extra damage. Close combat, of course, more damage. Concentrated area, more damage. And we are using Blindside to get a little more crit. Now, you'll notice that I only have 77% chance to crit. And for Flicker Strike, the one thing about it that's unique about this skill is you pretty much always want to have 100% crit on it. Because how Flicker Strike works is that when you hit your first Flicker Strike, right? We press the button Flicker Strike, it chains. But the thing is, the crit for the rest of the chain is determined by that first hit. So if that first hit crits, then the rest of the hits will be crits. But if that first hit isn't a crit, then the rest of the hits will not be a crit. So that is why it's important to have 100% crit chance on your Flicker Strike so that you are critting all your hits. Because if you miss it, then you're critting none of your hits. Now, it says 77% here, but because of my tree and because of Blindside, I end up having 100% crit when the enemy is blinded. And I have blind on charged staff. So that's why I have this particular setup. But not every single one of you guys is going to be able to get 100% crit chance with the setup that you have with your gear, right? Maybe you might not have enough crit on your weapon. Maybe you might not have enough crit on your tree or whatever it might be, right? Because of that, for most people, instead of Blindside, I would probably recommend going Pinpoint Critical. That will guarantee that you get the 100% crit with the current skill tree setup that I have in the description. But use your own best discretion. If you have POB, throw it on there. See if you are able to use Blindside instead of Pinpoint Critical, because Pinpoint Critical does lower your damage by quite a bit. So that's why I end up putting Blindside on here. And I've also set up my tree in a way where it takes advantage of that, where I have like a weapon set for like, you know, we have one weapon set is going to be my Flicker weapon set. The other weapon set is going to be my Falling Thunder weapon set. And those have like different crit chance nodes because those have different crit chances on their own. So use your own best discretion, but I will include a kind of global one size fits all tree in the description for the Mobalytics guide. So yeah, that's why we have this current setup there. But again, you don't have to use Flicker Strike if you don't want to. It's just that this build uses it. With that, let's go over the other ones. Of course, the third main, well, actually, let's go over Stormwave next, right? I want to go over Stormwave because this build does have some issues with getting charges sometimes because we use Profane Ritual to get our power charges. Now, Profane Ritual, what that does is it consumes corpses on the ground to give you a power charge. And we have that link to Reaper's Invocation so that we just hold down the button while we're flickering, and then we get all of the power charges from Profane Ritual. But because we are shattering so often with Pull Circle, it ends up being there aren't that many corpses on the ground to use for our Profane Ritual a lot of times. Now, I'd say I have a probably 70 to 80% uptime on my flickers on this build, but whenever we do run out of charges, I use Stormwave. Now, for Stormwave, we use this to start the map, of course. We start the map using this, and then we get enough for our charged staff. Then we get some for our flicker, basically. We get 7 power charges for our charged staff. Then we get some power charges for our flicker. That's how it works. But for this, because it is solely used for getting power charges for the most part, I actually have elemental focus linked to it so it can't shatter enemies, because that is what prevents us from getting power charges in the first place. So we have elemental armament, rapid attacks, branching fissures, innervate, and elemental focus on here just to do that. We're probably going to be mixing in a good bit of Stormwave in your gameplay. So that's why we have this setup right here. It's probably gonna be like, your flicker, 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 and then you might run out of charges, or you see like a small little pack in front of you with like 2 or 3 mobs that you just throw out a storm wave and then use your Reaper's Invocation to get some power charges. That's kind of like how that works. And then we have our charge staff, which if you see right here, charge staff doesn't do that much damage by itself. So that's why we have a charge staff that's pretty much all for utility. So we have prolonged duration to make sure that charge staff lasts as long as it can, say with heightened charges. We have blind to make sure we're able to blind all of our enemies to take advantage of the blind side instead of the blind nodes we have. We also have perpetual charge, and then we have culling strike. And throughout my gameplay, culling strike actually procs very often, so this is used quite a bit. So that is our AoE setup. We also have Herald of Thunder, of course, Elemental Armament, Exploit Weakness because we are breaking armor. We have Frost Nexus because this makes it so that when we freeze an enemy, it creates chilled ground, and we do a lot of cold damage with Embitter. So we freeze enemies pretty often, right? And as a result, we are able to create the Frost Nexus frozen ground on the ground, and then that will further help with the chains of the Herald of Ice, because when they're chilled, because of Full Circle, they always shatter. And when they shatter, that procs Herald of Ice. So it's really nice. And then we have Lightning Mastery just for a little bit more damage. So that's kind of the setup for AoE. For single target, we are just using the typical Falling Thunder tech, right? So Tempest Flurry, we maximize on attack speed. Rapid attacks, Rage 3. We also have Crescendo 2. And then we are using something interesting that might not be on your mind, which is Rigwald's Ferocity. This makes it so that weapon set 1 skills have 20% more attack speed but 15% less damage. As you can see, my Tempest Flurry is very low level compared to everything else because I have a very low level Tempest Flurry, because this is not for doing damage. This is for building up combo. So as a result, we have Tempest Flurry with Rigwald's on our weapon set 1 so that it gets the 20% more attack speed so we can attack as fast as we can, so we can build up combo. We also have blind on to be here because we have blind nodes that give us crit. And this is all to build up combo for Falling Thunder. So we have Culmination on Falling Thunder. We have Blind Side on Falling Thunder. Inevitable Critical. This is really important because it allows us to reach 100% crit. We only use Falling Thunder once in a boss fight anyway, so it doesn't really matter. We want Inevitable Critical to help us get more crit. We have Overextend and Ambrosia on this. Now, in order to get power charges when we do our Falling Thunder, of course, Tempest Flurry, right? Build up the combo. And we also have Culmination on Hand of Chayula plus Aelith's Chimes. This is basically the typical monk one-shot combo, where you build up combo, use Hand of Chayula, get a bunch of power charges with Aelith's Chimes, and then you're going to expend it all with Falling Thunder to do a ton of damage. So that basically takes care of bossing. And that's also why I think that the Flicker Strike is still very viable in this meta. I know a lot of people are going the Spark Lightning Warp build, which is basically like, in most cases, better Flicker Strike. But because we have the Herald chaining, and also because using Quarterstaff gives us access to this basically like, one-shot capability for anything, right? I think that the Flicker Strike playstyle is just a more well-rounded playstyle. You're able to deal with mobbing, and you're able to deal with bossing very, very easily. So that is going to be our skill gem setup. And I talked a little bit about Reaper's Invocation earlier, but this is going to be what we use for our power charge generation. What you do and how you use it is basically while we're flickering, we press like the Flicker Strike button, and while we're flying, you just hold down your Reaper's Invocation, and it'll just proc while you're flickering. That's why I have Reaper's Invocation on like a mouse button. That way it's like easy for me to hold down while I'm flickering. You can use cast on crit, or even cast on ailment because we do so many ailments. But in general, I'd say that this is just better because it costs less spirit. If you can get more spirit, right, cast on crit is probably more comfortable. That way you don't have to hold down a button for it. But if you're talking about just like efficiency, Reaper's Invocation is going to be way more efficient than cast on critical because it only costs 30 spirit, and all you do is hold down the button and you'll be able to get your charges while you're doing that. So yeah, that is the skill setup. Now our tree, as I mentioned earlier, is a little bit specialized for our certain setup, but again, for the majority of people, I do have like a non-specialized setup that I will link again in the Mobalytics guide. But for this tree, we have a couple of things on here, right? We have 2 rings. First one is this control metamorphosis, which it's another tech that I got from Korihor. This is a really nice control metamorphosis. It is a medium to large ring. This is nice because it allows us to get some really important nodes. So it allows us to get for the jugular for crit damage, allows us to get true strike for crit chance, it allows us to get Chakra of Thought, which will increase our attack speed when our mana is not low. So on top of giving us a little bit more survivability, it also makes it so that we're able to attack faster, which is really important for both Flicker Strike and Tempest Flurry to be able to get charges. We also have Event Horizon, which will let us do more chaos damage, which will allow us to chain our Heralds a lot better. And of course, we have down here Distracted Target, increased crit chance against blinded enemies, which we've seen on our character. We are always blinding. So this is a very, very, very efficient control metamorphosis diamond. It saves you so many nodes, right? It saves you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 nodes. And 10, 11, 12, 13. It saves you 13 nodes by having this control metamorphosis. It's very, very good. You want to have as low minus elemental resistances, and the chaos resistance doesn't matter, right? You're a CI character. I took this from like another character that wasn't CI, which is why the chaos resistance is so low. If you are doing this on your character and you're just buying from scratch, just buy a very, very low minus to all elemental resistances, and the chaos resistance can be whatever. Now, we also have another one right here, which is our Time Loss Sapphire, which gives us critical chance and critical damage for notables. Down here, there's a lot of notables that we take. I don't take dizzying hits because I don't need crit chance for my single target setup, which is the red line right here. So we don't take that, but everything else, we are benefiting from this Time Loss Sapphire. So increased crit chance, increased crit damage. Even if you don't take these nodes right here, it's still very beneficial, and it'll give you more crit chance, crit damage if you have crit damage if you have the right rolls, but crit chance for the most part you're gonna be getting more than just a regular Sapphire here. We're also using Walker of the Wilds in order to leech. We have leech right now on our ring right here. Where is it? This one right here. Leech damages mana, so that's why we have that, and it's to help us keep up our mana. And then, of course, we have Chaos Inoculation. Very, very important. And to combine it with a basement so we're not always getting stunned. I'll explain a little bit about like the weapon swap stuff, but right now we have a weapon swap setup where we have crit chance on our Flicker Strike setup, so we're always critting 100% of the time. That way we don't have to use pinpoint crit. And then on our second weapon set, which is our single target weapon set, right? Whenever we go into Tempest Flurry, into Falling Thunder, we use our second weapon set, right? You can see right here, it's on the first one. And then on our, on our regular AoE, we just use this one right here. So we use 2 weapon sets based off of what we're doing. So that is why we have that setup, and they have different crits. So some will have, for example, my Flicker Strike setup, where it's going to have more critical chance on it, just to get the 100% crit. And then for our one-shot setup, we just have our critical damage nodes. So that's why we have all these. Again, we have a tree that has just kind of the more generic version that doesn't have so much like stuff on the weapon swapping. But yeah, so that is our current setup. We also have a Megalomaniac for Doomsayer, and I'd say this is like one of the most important things. You don't have to have it on a Megalomaniac. You can put it on your amulet, but I found that Doomsayer is really helpful in the chaining of the Heralds, which is why I like having it. Just having more AoE is really nice. Right here, Doomsayer, right? Herald skills have 25 increased area of effect and deal 30% increased damage. It's very, very nice for the Herald chaining, and as a result, we also have Storm Charge anointed onto our amulet. If you cannot get a good Megalomaniac, I would suggest putting the Doomsayer on your amulet and anoint it on there. Our Megalomaniac has Doomsayer and Call the Hordes. I mean, it was just kind of, I was looking for something with Doomsayer plus something else useful, and Call the Hordes is not bad since we are using Charge Staff with Cole on it. So I just figured I'd use that and just call it a day, right? So that's why we have that Megalomaniac there. But with that, let's talk about our equipment. So our helmet, chest, and boots are basically there for survivability. Get as many survivability stats as you can on there. Energy shield, resistances. My helmet is really bad. But for the socket, we are using a bear talisman to get more area effect because more area effect is good for chaining. If you find that you don't need so much area effect and you're satisfied with the chaining without it, you can use a iron rune on it, whatever you want, right? But I have a bear talisman on here to increase area effect. Survivability again, survivability, move speed. I need to upgrade these boots. It only has 25% move speed. I need to get some better boots. But this just goes to show you can do this with pretty bare bones gear. For our uniques, of course, as I mentioned earlier, Pole Circle and Ming's Heart. Now, I know a lot of people might be like, do you really need Pole Circle at the end game when you're doing a lot of cold damage? The reason why I'm using Pole Circle is because it just basically guarantees we're always going to be shattering enemies and as a result proccing heralds and getting the herald chain. I've tried with Pole Circle and without Pole Circle, and I have to say that with Pole Circle is always just going to be better because you never have to worry about how much cold damage you're doing pretty much. As long as you're chilling the enemy, you're always going to proc Herald of Ice. Some people will be like, well, if you have enough damage, you're pretty much always chilling anyways, right? But maybe there's a situation where it's like a super high delirium with ailment threshold up, and that's just going to make it so that you don't chill enough, you don't freeze enough to be able to proc the heralds. Well, you don't have to worry about that with Pole Circle. This is basically 100% uptime on your Herald of Ice, as opposed to the other option where you don't use it, and maybe you have a 90% uptime. But even 90%, those 10% is going to be affecting your ability to shatter and Herald of Ice chain. That is why we choose Pole Circle, and that's why we choose Ritualist for our character. Now, we have a rarity enchant on this. You don't need that. It's just randomly I evolved it and I got that, so it's very nice. But yeah, we use Mings, of course, as I mentioned earlier, to do extra chaos damage. If you don't feel like you're using dealing enough extra chaos damage to armor break, you can use, of course, the runes on your weapon to get extra chaos damage, and also a heart of the or what is it? The heart of the well jewel, the unique jewel, to get extra chaos damage as well. Other than that, rare ring, you want as much flat as possible, resistances, and leech. That's basically what you want. This was a very placeholder ring as well. As you can see, I only have physical and fire. It would be nice if I had triple flat on the top, but beggars can't be choosers. I was a poor man. I needed it. For our amulet, you're going to want 3 things. So first is going to be a little bit of spirit to allow you to use deadly heralds on your Herald of Ice. You're also going to want to have +3 level of all melee skills. And then the third thing you're going to want is survivability. So resistances, things like that. If you don't need resistances, get some rarity. But in general, the thing you definitely need for survivability is % increase maximum energy shield and also % increase global defenses. So those are the things that you need, right? A little bit of spirit, +3 melee skills, and survivability on that amulet. For our anoint, again, we have Storm Charge right now. If you don't have the Megalomaniac for Doomsayer, I would suggest putting Doomsayer on here just to give your pops a little bit more area of effect. Our belt is the other thing. Shavron's Satchel. Because we are playing a full energy shield character, we will need to have a means of recovering our energy shield. Not being like, since our character is not a Chayula, we will not be able to use Leech to recover energy shield. As a result, we have to use Shavron's Satchel. Now, this is a little bit bugged, unfortunately, because even though Shavron's Satchel, everything about it basically is Eternal Youth from last league, it doesn't work exactly like Eternal Youth. For some reason, you can't actually recover energy shield with your regular life flask while you have maximum health, or in our case, 1 life with Chaos Inoculation. But you can use instant flasks to recover. It doesn't make any sense. If it was truly that you were only able to recover your energy shield when you have missing life, then the instant flask shouldn't work, but it does work. So I think it's bugged, but still, it's better than having no recovery. So we have to use this to recover our energy shield because we are not an evasion character, so we can't use Ghost Dance. And we're not an HP character, so we can't recover using Life Flask. So we use regular Life Flask with a 50% amount instant recovery. Using the Olros Flask is going to be best in slot here. but that's expensive. So that's why we have this ultimate life flask here for that. But yes, Shadowrun Satchel is required, and as a result, you cannot use Headhunter. You know, you can use it, but sometimes you're just gonna get popped. You just gotta, you know, realize that. Like, for the most part, I'd say 70%, 80% of the maps, I'm totally fine with just using Headhunter. But sometimes you get that one Undying Will Abyss monster, and you're not able to kill it, and it just kills you. So that's why, for the most part, you're going to be using Shadowrun Satchel for your belt. For our gloves, triple flats, melee skill, crit damage, attack speed, if you can get it. Unfortunately, I've been really unlucky with getting that last, what is it called? The Desecrated mod. So I couldn't get the attack speed. The other thing you can do is, of course, get the Essence of Horror and get the triple, what is it called? The talismans that give you attack speed. It's going to be way more expensive, but at the end game, super min-max, you're going to want that, right? More attack speed, the better. So eventually, I'll probably upgrade to those when I get a chance. This was a very, very cheap craft. So that's why we have that. And then for our weapon, you're going to want to have as much flat as possible, right? So flat LE, or just damage in general, ideally flat LE. You're going to want prioritize, lightning flat, and cold flat. You can even have physical flat on there. That's fine as well. Fire flat is going to be the lowest priority. As you can see, I desecrated a T1 fire flat, so that's kind of what we went with. The other thing is you do want the increased elemental damage with attacks. That is going to be very, very important for your damage. I crafted this with gain extra damage as cold damage. You could do lightning or whatever you want, but you ideally want to have both lightning and cold on your weapon. It's just better for the build. You're able to shock more, proc Herald of Thunders, and you're going to be able to freeze more, proc Herald of Ice, right? So best stats, of course, right? You always want critical chance. You can do attack speed or crit damage. Because we are using Tempest Flurry for our setup for our one-shot, I do like having more attack speed. Of course, the +6 level of all attack skills is very good. And the extra damage is very nice as well. I probably should have gone lightning extra damage instead of cold, since we didn't have a flat lightning. And that's why we have to use the lightning runes on the top. But if you do have flat lightning on your character, you can probably use like extra chaos damage or 15% all element attacks, right? Your attacks gain 50% damage of all elements. So those are going to be the best in slots. My weapon it's fine. It was a cheap craft again. And that's why we have this. Just as much elemental damage as possible. Increase elemental damage with attacks, the percentage, +6 level of all attacks, and crit chance. That's what you want to prioritize on your staff. Now, for your charms, you're going to want to have a stone charm, of course, because you are full energy shield, so you're going to get stunned quite a bit. Stone charm prevents you from getting chain stunned. You're going to want a thawing charm as per usual. And then I use silver charm because it just helps out, makes it so I don't have to worry about chilled ground maps. We're always going to have this up, making us so that we're never getting affected by chilled ground. For our HP potion, of course, as I mentioned earlier, again, instant recovery flask or an Olroth's. And then for our mana flask, I don't have the best in slot mana flask at all. I haven't worked on that yet, but because we use Ambrosia, the higher charges, the better. So if you can get something like this, 68% increased charges, I think, is the minimum that you want. That will help you out with getting maximum damage off of your Ambrosia one-shot. And that about wraps up this video. Hopefully you guys enjoy this build. I have a lot of fun with it. I think it's one of the coolest builds out there. Like, of course, maybe I'm biased because I have Flicker Strike, but hopefully you guys enjoy this build. Let me know down in the comments if you have any questions as per usual. And also, if you enjoyed this build and enjoyed this video, be sure to hit the sub button. It's the best way to support the channel, and it's completely free. I also stream every single night on twitch.tv/MeSoXhero, so I'd love to see you guys there. But if not, hopefully I'll see y'all on the next video. All right, guys. Peace.
My mana's gone. mana. Proof of my prowess. I've no mana.